every level. It's all about the new rules for careers, growth, and performance. Just today, I actually woke up extremely early and I was reading the article in The Economist, and I shared it with Daria today that just last quarter in the US only, the job and hiring for junior roles has decreased just over last quarter by 300,000 junior job openings, which does show that AI does have an impact on and creates new rules for careers and growth and performance. So I'm really excited to be hosting this webinar. And maybe to start with, the webinar is being hosted by myself, Milda Bayer. I'm the VP of Marketing and Go-to-Market at Lepaya. And Lepaya is a learning impact company. We make sure that you can connect your business goals to your workforce needs to your learning activities. We make sure that you accelerate business strategies through learning, that you close your skill gaps at every career level, and that you scale learning worldwide. And while you can measure the impact and ROI of all things learning. We work with the brands, as you can see in the bottom of the screen, quite a few corporates like Maersk, Rabobank, Picnic, ING, BCG, but also other brands like Hunkemöller, Binder, and more. So we're really happy to be providing these companies and their employees with the right skills, the right time, and the right place. And right now, I would like to introduce our panelists. So Dieter Veldsman is one of our panelists. Dieter, would you like to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Milda. Lovely to be here. My name is Dr. Dieter Veldsman. I'm the Chief HR Scientist at the Academy to Innovate HR. We're an organization focused on upskilling and preparing HR professionals for the future and looking at what are some of the newer trends that will impact our profession and how we can prepare for it. So lovely to be here with all of you and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you for being here, Dieter. Daria, what about yourself?
Hi, well, I'm happy to be here. I'm Daria Rudnik. I'm a team architect and a leadership executive coach. I help leaders build amazing teams. And before that, I used to be chief people officer for mostly tech and telecom companies. And ever since that time, I'm fascinated with building amazing teams with AI, without AI. And you were one of the first people to know that I've recently published a book about building self-sufficient teams and the skills people need and teams need in this era of great disruption.
Love that. Thank you so much, Daria. And also good promotion. If you want to, please share it in the chat, the link to your book. I think people would love to hear and read more. And if there's any good deal, just asking for other marketeers and salespeople and so on behalf, if there's a good deal or a discount, feel free to also share that in the meeting chat. Having that said, let's continue to our agenda of the day. So we'll be touching upon three really, really important topics. So number one is how AI is transforming roles at different levels and what that means for career growth. Number two is about redesigning career frameworks for the AI era. So balancing clarity with adaptability in AI-driven organizations. And then, of course, we will dive deeper into how performance evaluations should evolve, as I think most of the organizations or most of you are going through performance cycles today. And as AI changes the relationships between activity, effort, and output, and I believe that both Dieter and Daria have a lot to say about all of these topics. So with no further ado, we're going to start with our first question and topic. How is AI redefining roles across different career levels, and what does this mean for traditional job hierarchies? Maybe as you've also just shared your book, Daria, maybe you can start by answering the first question.
Thanks, Milda. And it's a very interesting question. I don't think there is one correct answer to that. But I wanted to share a recent research that I've read. It's a Harvard Business Review did the research with GitHub Copilot, where they kind of looked at how developers actually work. And what they found out, which is unsurprisingly, yes, developers could do more work with the help of AI. We all knew that. What we didn't know is that managers had less work. The traditional command, control, delegate, set goals for developers cycle didn't work because they could take those tasks. AI could control those tasks. So all this admin stuff that managers at line managers or middle managers usually do and get involved in, which takes most of their times, is now redundant. AI can do that for them. So it either leaves managers more time for strategy, for collaboration, for like helping teams learn and develop as a unit, as a team, or they just have to be let go because the value that they used to bring in the organization in managing cycle is no longer needed with the help of AI. And that was very interesting discovery for me personally, because we all know that some technical things can be automated with AI, and that would change the traditional kind of hierarchy and roles. But with the middle managers being at risk, that was a very interesting finding. And it also showed that, again, there was a question, like, I think you probably mentioned now that like there were less junior developers being hired today. And it is still a question with AI being able to do what juniors can do. What does it mean for organization? Does it mean that you don't need juniors anymore? Or does it mean that any junior developer can fast track to middle developer because they can learn faster with the help of AI? And I mean, I don't have the answer to that question, and I think we'll still need to figure it out. And I think it depends on whether it's a developer or a marketer or an HR person or someone else or a financial person. So it does redefine roles. We do not know exactly how, but we know that it can help people grow faster. We know that it can transform roles like managers. And we know that some roles will be automated, like they always are automated within the like all the digitalization era. We all see jobs being automated and redundant.
Before we jump to Dieter, Daria, a very quick follow-up question here then. Do you see that as the roles are being redefined and the organizations and the typical hierarchies are being redesigned, do you see that companies tend to now opt for more hiring more or upskilling more towards generalist roles versus functional and specialist roles? Do you see a difference there in the organizational design, not just the levels? Or is it still quite unknown and we are still speculating because we're just scratching the surface here?
What I see, and again, I saw a recent like report recently, is that companies tend to hire more experienced people because those people, they know processes, they know how the good process should look like, and they know where AI can bring value. While when we talk about junior people, they are not familiar with the process yet. They can use AI, but they cannot optimize the process with the help of AI.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Dieter. What is your take on this question and maybe what Daria just shared?
I think there's a couple of things that stand out for me. I think the first one is we first have to acknowledge that AI always exists in a particular context, right? And I think it's important to interpret some of these changes that we are starting to see also in the context of what's happening globally, also in the context of what we're seeing in terms of what's happening from an economic point of view, because that will influence some of the decisions that organizations will make pertaining to what org design is going to look like. I think kind of zoning in on AI a little bit more, there is a couple of interesting things that we're already starting to see on the horizon that also links into what Daria has mentioned. I think the first one is that organizations that are starting to leverage value from AI, and that isn't for all organizations necessarily the case, do see it as an organizational design challenge. So what I mean by that is to fundamentally look at the tasks and activities where we can utilize AI tools or AI agents in future, and thinking about that holistically and not in isolation. If you think about AI as only a tool and not necessarily as something that you have to incorporate in how work gets designed in future, I don't think you're going to be able to leverage the value. That then leads towards the conversation around how is that then changing the way that we've thought about roles across the different career levels. I think Daria is absolutely correct. We have seen a decline in middle management over the last 2 to 3 years, but even going back further than that, it wasn't only as a result of AI. It has been as a result also of changing org designs, people trying to be a lot more fluid, trying to be a lot more agile in how they've set up organizations. I think AI has accelerated that a little bit more. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about that we are probably dealing with the last generation of managers that will only be managing people related teams. And what I mean by that is that I think in future we will start looking a lot more at a blended workforce where agents and human beings have to augment each other a lot more. And the role of manager around orchestrating what the workforce and how work gets done is going to become a lot more interesting. And I think that leads us towards a conversation around new competencies for managers in the future. I think it's still, the jury for me is still very much out around, does that lead towards a decline in middle management inevitably? I think, that's always dependent on other contextual factors, industry, type of work that happens, type of organization you are also currently at. And the last point I want to make here is I think it is really interesting for me. There's this big conversation that you've also mentioned, Milda, around entry level jobs, right? And when you scratch a little bit below the surface, AI is only one of the factors that's kind of influencing the ability to hire people into the workforce. We also need to acknowledge that we are a growing population with a changing demographic, so that will always influence what the workforce composition looks like. But there's two different schools of thought here. The one is that, yes, AI is replacing entry-level jobs. So in the future, we need to prepare people to kind of step into the roles that today we classify as your second or your third role as their very first. So that means that we're going to have to develop early grassroots careers very, very differently. Or there is another school of thought, which I think is a little bit of a doom and gloom perspective that says, there will be no entry level jobs for the future, which I do not support. I don't think that's going to be the reality. And I think there is, however, a conversation that we need to have at a societal and organizational level, a little bit more there around saying, but okay, how are we going to develop talent? Because I don't worry about functional or technical skill. I think people can learn that rather quickly. I worry a lot more about your durable skills, your maturity, the things that you kind of learn by entering into the work environment. And I think that's what we're going to have to figure out in our workforce strategies for the future.
Thank you. And let's dive a little bit into the workforce strategy or strategy 2026. So, as you know, I think most of the people's teams currently are in workforce planning. And I think myself, as a go-to-market marketing leader, I'm also looking into how should my team look like for 2026. And there's this conversation, should we start looking at AI as a full-time employee or a tool? Because, of course, when you're talking about cost reductions or process optimizations, the first question that C-level management tends to ask, can't this be done by AI? Where do you see sort of 2026 workforce planning going towards?
So our recent trends report that we've also released on like exactly what does the workforce look like next year showcases that there's three strategies that organizations are following, all of them with different benefits and limitations. The first one is very much the one that you've mentioned. A lot of people are saying, we call it capacity extraction. So can I utilize AI to do some of the work and then do it with less people in future? And we see that typically in the headlines, right? It's the big headlines we see around Salesforce. It's the big headlines that we see around Klarna, et cetera, those organizations that we find, in the public media. I do think with that type of strategy, and this is my personal view, I think there is a risk, something we call AI regret, where people make a decision based on what they think AI can do. And once they've replaced the people a couple of months down the line, they actually have to rehire because, surprise, surprise, AI doesn't replace the full human being. It replaces tasks and activities, right? So I think that's a cautionary strategy to follow. And again, I would caution there to say, do a proper organizational design so that you know the decisions that you're starting to make. The second strategy is one that's a lot more about capacity amplification. So it says, great, I've got AI, let me add it to what my team is currently doing, and let's actually extend our scope around the things that we've never been able to do before. We work with a lot of HR professionals. I usually ask them, what's inhibiting you from, insert outcome there. And they usually say, it's time or skill or the resource. So in this strategy, you kind of utilize that more as an extension of your team. And then the third strategy is one that's more longer term around reinvestment, to saying realistically, AI is going to take away tasks and activities that could influence some roles in its entirety. How do I actually shift people across into new domains and new areas where I do want to invest into the human workforce for the future? So those are kind of the three strategies that we see there. So I would caution, don't make knee-jerk decisions. Do proper investigation around what do you want AI to do, what do you want human beings to do, and how does it augment each other? Pilot that, and then I think there can be transitions over time. This AI regret thing, I think in the next 12 to 18 months, we'll see a lot more of that, with people then typically say, I actually have to rehire some of the people that I let go. And there's already a couple of good examples out there with it. It's already starting to happen where people just laid off people at scale as a result of AI. And again, it's in a context that's not only as a result of AI. I think AI gets blamed at the moment a little bit for kind of everything that changes in the workforce.
Yeah, well, it's good that hopefully it doesn't have any feelings just yet, because getting to be blamed is never fun. But let's talk a little bit about who actually owns the AI transformation and workforce transformation within the organization. And we've prepared a poll. So Linda, who's on behind our Lapaya Amsterdam account today, she just launched a poll about who shapes the future of AI adoption within your organization. And we would like to ask the audience to vote for this. Is it a CTO? Is it a CHR or CPO? Is there a transformation officer that currently has a seat at the table on the C level? Is it a dedicated task force that owns this? Or is it someone else? And of course, please let us know in the chat if you see that someone else should own this. And while we're getting the results in, I would like to already invite Daria a little bit of like, who do you think shapes the future of AI adoption within the organization, and who should take that role? Because it is a very challenging, very unknown, almost job description that requires a very, very versatile profile. So curious to hear your thoughts, Daria, before we end the poll.
Thanks, Milda. I mean, when I see that poll, I kind of, uh, I'm reminded of I don't know if you've seen that during the COVID, there was a meme, who leads digital transformation, CTO, CEO, COVID-19. So when COVID-19 hit, everyone went digital. So something will happen that will all like go into AI no matter what. Um, I mean, I can't choose one, and I don't see one person actually leading transformation. I mean, they can be project manager or project leader, whatever, but you need input from all the functions. You need input from HR, obviously, because that's a skill-based. You need certain skill, and you need not just like data set, not just technical skills, not technical skills, but skills how to collaborate with AI, skills how to use AI output and critically evaluate it and process it and think it through and kind of make a decision, make a human decision. Skills of how do we identify areas that are not relevant for AI that need to be human led. How do we use emotional intelligence in those questions that are not like that AI is not capable of dealing with? I mean, all those skill sets and human transformation and human collaboration should be like HR should play a huge role in this AI adoption together with technology officer and CEO and finance and whoever else is on the team. So it's definitely a team like.
Yeah. And we can really see that it's becoming like some people vote a dedicated task force, and that's the second most popular answer. Dieter, are you surprised by the responses of this poll?
No, I think we've started to see from our own data, and it's also backed up by a couple of other studies, a very similar view, in terms of how the audience has voted. I think to Daria's point, if you are thinking that AI is a technology transformation, I think you're in trouble as an organization because it's much more of a mindset, culture, and a ways of work shift that you are trying to make. Having said that, if you flip it completely to the other side and it's only HR led, then I don't think you necessarily build it in a way that is sustainable. And then I think you focus only on isolated skill culture components and not necessarily the technology data, etc., that we require to leverage value. So what we are finding at least is a very good approach to take is to have centers of excellence that focus on AI that comprises of multidisciplinary teams so that you have a shared view around the table of what we need to do. And then I think very similar to some of the comments made in the chat, then utilizing that team to build excellence and then actually incubating it and then sending it out to start equipping and enabling other people to drive guided experimentation in their own areas. Because ultimately you want to infuse AI as a way of work into your culture and give people the skill sets to make the right ethical decisions on how and where they apply it. But you have to have some central place where a joint conversation about the strategy and the direction goes, but that has to be multidisciplinary in nature. Otherwise, unfortunately, it becomes aligned to whoever leads it. If it's only the CTO, it becomes a tech project. If it's only HR, it becomes a people project. You need something a little bit broader that actually integrates and pulls it together.
Yeah, I see it in a very similar way. I do, however, also seen a lot of challenges where if every leader is responsible and starts taking so much ownership and responsibility of developing their own AI stack, can become a bit of a Frankenstein type of situation. So I think this excellence center is exactly what we need to start seeing. And thank you so much of course, for sharing the results. And let's move into the next topic, which is on when career progression is no longer vertical. how should organizations redesign career frameworks? And I'm excited for this one because there's also some personal stories behind this one. So, Daria, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, thanks, Milden. Again, to be honest, that's not a new question. All the questions we're talking about today, we've had them before. I've had them as a chief people officer. How should we redesign career frameworks? And like my personal career journey, it's like I started my career in Deloitte, and I moved up the career ladder up to chief people officer. But at some point, I switched. I mean, I changed it. I'm still in my career progression. It's just different type of career. It's not this vertical hierarchical career. And when I see with my coaching clients, the leaders, they also thinking, okay, what's my next step? And the next step is not necessarily to be an executive or CEO or CX or whatever it is. It's what is that the place where I can bring the most meaning? And it could be either setting up your own business or like going into consulting. And there are some very interesting examples within the organization when leaders actually take roles. Like they take one part of their current role and expand it. Like there was a lady who became a contingency workforce expert across the organization, whereas before it was just one part of her role. And the other one became a sustainability expert for the whole organization. And where AI can help here is to identify the need for those new roles that can evolve within the organization. And again, recently, last week actually, Google has announced the new platform, Google Skills. And what they say this Google Skills platform will be able to do, launching end of October, is that you can learn skills there with AI. You're not just learning skills there yourself. You have labs where with other people together you learn and some other people share knowledge and you gain this skill. And again, with the help of AI, you can evaluate those skills. And then companies who need skills that you have can hire you. So AI can create this platform for learning and identification where the skills are needed, and that will help you grow in your career, whether it's hierarchical, like vertical, horizontal, whatever it is. But that's the main, I think, benefit of AI in organizational growth and like career growth.
Thank you. Dieter, what's your response on the AI career progression not being any longer vertical?
So I think to Daria's point, right, I think the nature of careers have changed quite a bit. I think where AI has started to accelerate it, we know that over the last couple of years, organizations have been trying to go a lot more skills based and skills focused. And that's been very much driven by availability of talent globally, as well as also needs internally to drive a lot more mobility and to optimally utilize the workforce that we already have. So I think the nature of careers have started to shift and change a lot more. Also taking into account that we know that the employer and employee relationship has also changed quite significantly. So I think people do want a lot more and something different from work. So we talk about career life fit. I want a job that fits into what I want from life broader. Touches on Daria's point around the fact that I think in the past people have been, and remember, career success is defined subjectively. And the moment that we realize that, then we know that career success for everybody is not necessarily defined by moving up vertically up the career ladder. For other people, it's meaning. For others, it's status. For others, it's wealth. For others, it's balance. So that's always going to be slightly different. Where I think AI is starting to have an impact on career progression to bring it back is that it is forcing organizations to think in a lot more task and activity based manner. And it is then also starting to utilize the technology platforms that allow us to do things related to internal mobility, skill matching, and be a lot more fluid in how people move around in the organization. We've seen talent marketplaces already go that direction a couple of years ago. And to be honest, I think until AI has started to progress, that has always been a very difficult thing to do in an organization because it is a culture change, but you need very solid technology to understand the skills I have at a verified level and how people can then go and apply them outside of the way that we've thought about traditional jobs and roles in the past. So I think something, and I've added a slide here on that, is just how organizations should start thinking. And we've actually changed our own language to say, no, the traditional career ladder, it still exists, but it's not the only way to think about career progression. So we think a lot more about what we call a career lattice, which is more of a 360 based approach that is driven by a couple of other factors. The first one that I've mentioned is very much driven by how you define success as an individual. The second one is what is available in your immediate environment. And there I think AI plays a role to help you understand what is your transferable and durable skill as an individual, because usually that's what holds people back. I don't know what else I can do. We've grown up in a world where you define your role as part of a functional disciplinary area, whereas AI doesn't work in verticals, it works in horizontals. So if you are able to understand what is my durable skill and what I can transfer to another domain, all of a sudden the traditional career path is just one of the options that are available for you in future. When I talk about transferability and durability, I work with the HR teams a lot. I ask them, what is your core skill? They'll say recruitment. I'm saying, no, that's one of the skills. That's not your durable skill. That's your functional skill. Durable skill is something a lot more around critical thinking. It's a lot more around planning and organizing. And those things you can actually go and apply in various different areas. So I think there's going to be a sequence here. As roles change, people will think a lot more in terms of the skills I have. Organizations will be defining work a lot more in tasks, activities, and skill requirements. And AI will enable us to have a lot more matching and mobility that gives people options. But there has to be a bit of a mindset change as well to be able to understand, how do I actually access the lattice in an organization and stop thinking hierarchical about what career success is going to look like.
And before we jump on the poll now, like you triggered me to ask this question. How long will this take?
I think some organizations are already starting to do it, right? But as I said at the beginning, it has to be joined together with, careers don't change in isolation. You have to think about my org design is changing, our culture of mobility is starting to change, how we utilize people and help people access new opportunities start to change. There are already a lot of organizations that's made significant strides in terms of mobility, especially those also that tap into the non-employee or permanent employee workforce in the past. So when we think about gig workers, short-term workers, etc. But I think it will become more of a general norm over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of how people think about talent as opposed to what it is today. Because skills-based organizations have been a great idea for a number of years. It's been very difficult for people to get it right in practice. Again, wearing an HR lens, it's easy to do that in learning and development. It's easy to do that in certain project-based environments. It gets really difficult when you want to hire based on skills only and not roles and not jobs. And I think that started to change a little bit more, that people understand that these things can coexist, but there's some changes we need to make in some of our practices and processes to allow that to happen. So I think to answer your question, we're closer than we think, but there's still a lot of work to do to be able to get us there. And I think AI is a great enabler, but it's not necessarily going to be the driving point or the only driving force that will lead towards this future state.
So Daria, do you agree with the timeline of Dieter then? Do you agree that we're closer than we think?
I'm not sure how close we are, but I do believe, like, I totally agree that organizations need to change. We've seen that during COVID when like everyone went remote and some organizations broke because not because people can't work remotely, but because organizations didn't support that. Same thing happens with AI. Some organizations will break because not because AI will break it, but because they cannot make sure people work and collaborate effectively together and the work structure is ready for this disruption. So it's first of all, it's like human or org design question and then AI.
All right. So let's jump into our next poll that will be discussing this question exactly. I think Linda is going to be launching this in just a moment. And it's about career growth in an AI-driven workplace. So the question is, as an HR leader, what concerns you most about supporting career growth in an AI-driven workplace? Is it identifying which skills employees should develop next? Is it fewer traditional promotion pathways? So we're struggling with promoting people. Is it helping employees demonstrate their unique value? And actually, this one triggers me a little bit of how much further can we help employees demonstrate their unique value? And are we approaching this times of a coach also becoming a really important skill, and even potentially something that we outsource in the business? Is it keeping up with the pace of change, or you're rather optimistic and you're not concerned because you know where you're going? So everyone, I invite you to participate in voting. And while everyone's voting, maybe Dieter, anything that you would like to elaborate a little bit on this one?
Yeah, without leading any of the answers that people are providing, I do think there's an interesting thing here around the fact that, firstly, we need to acknowledge that a lot of organizations don't really know what the skills are that they need and they require. They think they do, but when we start looking at workforce planning, very often people don't boil it down to how do I actually define what the skill sets are that I require? But then on the other side, to also, I mean, just cut them a little bit of slack. I also don't think often people know what skills they actually have. So there's this two-sided coin that I think is quite difficult, that organizations don't always know what they want. And that's where I think talent intelligence will become a lot more important in the future. But on the other side, we need to equip people to understand what is it that I have and what do I offer, and then start bringing those two worlds together. So I think it's not just one answer that would keep me awake at night.
All right, Daria.
When I look at the third question, like helping employees demonstrate their unique value, it kind of triggers a lot of conversation that I had before. When people say, like, organizations do recognize their best employees, they do recognize that this person is high performer, but they don't know what to do next. They don't know what to do with those people next. People don't know how they can grow next. So it's kind of we are at the stage where, okay, these are the high performance. They are great people. What's next? And again, as Dita said, if like we will be able to identify skills needed for development and like analyze skills that we already have, that might be an answer to that question. Okay, what's next?
And it's really about the team modeling, maybe. That's what I also wanted to add. So there's this theory of A players. I think there's like a high growth handbook written by someone who worked at Stripe, and they were talking, what can you give your A players? That's not just money. That's not just like career development. And A players want to work with A players, so it's also about team design and how you design your team and A players around each other. So yeah, in an AI-driven workforce, I think it will also be important of how do you design your teams and how do the synergies and skills and competencies interact together. So I'm really actually excited, and I would say I'm the optimistic one that I'm not concerned, because I think it will just cause and prompt us to match and create better teams across the organization. And with that, then let's go into our final question. Actually, how should performance evaluation evolve when AI changes the relationship between activity, effort, and output? And Dieter, maybe you could kick off with this one first.
So I think we've been talking about outcome-based performance management for a number of years, right? So I think there's been a general acknowledgement across the board that it's much more about what the outcome looks like and the impact of that versus what the effort and the input is, right? When we think about the way that productivity and those types of things have been defined traditionally. Having said that, though, I do think that there's two things that is going to be a challenge in the future. The first one is that, to be honest, performance management as a concept, and it's the practice everybody loves to hate, right? It's the practice that unearths a lot of other things in organizations that's not currently working. And I think it is a very human process there around, can people actually do things like set goals, give feedback, manage people, which gets us back to the earlier point around what is the role of managers going to be in future around workforce orchestration. I do think that there will be a shift a little bit more, and I hope that we are able to guide organizations there, that we start really embedding what the value is that people deliver, so that activity, effort, outputs, etc., actually gets conceptualized in what does value look like? Can we define what value looks like? And then let's have a value-based conversation when we start thinking about performance in future. But I think we are still a very, very far way away from there. And again, I have to, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record player this morning, but I do think the org design discussion with what is the expectation from people, what does good look like, has to fit into this ecosystem. And within that, we then design what performance is going to look like in future. I do think where AI will help is definitely, and there's an organization in Singapore that they've already incorporated AI to help managers, for example, have more data-driven conversations and prepare talking points, and employees to kind of guide them in the discussion to improve the quality of conversations. So I think we'll use that at a very tactical level for the short to medium term. And then maybe in the longer term, it'll play a role to actually start redefining and bringing new insights around how we measure value and what value is going to look like in future. So I hope that's where we go. But this one I'm a little skeptic about, because I think that there's some foundational people related competencies that we first need to build in managers and in employees before we just start adapting AI into the process.
I agree with you, Dieter, on this one, because also recently had the conversation on if you start expecting much more from your senior people in just, not just their functional leadership or functional management, but also AI literacy. What's the scope that we are evaluating during these performance reviews? What is the expectation? So Before we give the baton to Daria, maybe we can launch a poll, Linda, because it's very much adjacent to this question. Um, which is about performance evaluation. What do you primary measure in performance reviews today? Is it task completion and productivity metrics? Is it output quality and business impact? Is it skills developments and learning, or is it a mix of all of the above? And Daria, the question stays the same. How should performance evaluation evolve? And of course, curious to see what change do you see in evolution with all of the HR leaders that you work with.
Well, I would support Dieter on that as well. Well, about 15 years ago, when I was the chief people officer in a telecom company, I stopped the annual performance management process because it didn't bring any value to business, and it caused lots of frustration for people. We changed it to something else. We changed it to developmental conversations every like 2 weeks or every like 2 to 3 weeks. But it has nothing to do with AI. It has to do how we evaluate skills, how we evaluate outcome of people. And I'm a true believer of more fluid team-based organizations, like you, Milda, said. Like, how do we design teams that can bring the most value? And when you design teams, you need to evaluate the output, team outcome, not individual outcome. Because if team is designed right, you can have various outcomes from individual performance, which might be okay for this team because that's the best way this team will operate. And what is the organization? Organization is a team of teams. So kind of looking at the performance evaluation, or I mean, I would say like kind of value evaluation, understanding the value those teams brings is the next very complex question. But I mean, I don't believe in a traditional performance management approach where you sit with the employee and try to tick the boxes where you hit your goals and you didn't hit the goals when the world has shifted 3 times since the previous evaluation process.
Yeah, wow. Actually, like now I felt a little bit schooled because I thought performance and development conversations, they're the same thing, but I see that you're distancing yourself from the performance evaluation and going
Uh,
towards
that if
sort of the developmental conversation. So, you know, do you want to share a little bit more about that of why have you stepped back from this and why is it more about development actually that we're talking about? Is it this a little bit more on that?
Well, the thing is, when performance evaluation, you meet with the manager and you kind of evaluate your past performance. What have you done from what you have like recorded in the system before? And again, things like in our case, in our organization, things have been shifting so quickly. So the things that we put 3 months ago were irrelevant now. So what is it we're going to evaluate now? Okay, maybe some skills development, but that's one of the things, but it's not the traditional performance management. It's about what you've done, what your goals were, and how you achieve those goals. And developmental conversations. Okay, so what is it that we need you to be able to do in the future to be like resilient, for you to be more resilient, for our team to be more successful, for our team to create better outcomes, for our organization to be ready for future disruptions and changes? What kind of person, expert you need to be? And again, this can change, but these are the conversations focused on the future and helping people and teams grow. And I also like to have these conversations, not one to one, but when team gets together. And again, that's what I'm writing about my book, is how team get together and talk together. What is it that they need to develop? Because like Dita said, we don't know what skills we have and we don't have, but collectively we can understand what skills we need to have in our organization and who is the better person to develop those skills and bring them on the team, like as a team. So together we sit and decide, okay, that's how we want to work together within the next few months, and that's what you need to do, and that's what you need to do, that's what we all need to learn to reach that goal.
Thank you for sharing. And before we jump into wrap up, Dieter, any final thoughts on this particular question or on the performance evaluation poll responses?
So I think to Daria's point, I think performance evaluation has also evolved from various different approaches. 15, 20 years ago, I think there was the one approach, you used cascading down with a balanced scorecard or with SMART goals. I think organizations are doing well these days with much more dialogue-driven type of performance conversations. I'm also a big supporter of splitting out, let's talk about performance versus talking about development. I'm a firm supporter of having a performance process and approach in place that fits with your culture or that actually drives the culture that you want in the organization, but not necessarily to do something that is more, checklist, check box driven. I think that it's a bigger conversation around value contribution, development. Where do we go from here as part of that? And yet, to bring it back to the AI topic, I really believe that AI can help us improve the quality of how we do those things and actually lead towards people having more human but more focused on outcome conversations in future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So with that, we're going to start wrapping up and then we'll take a question. So the key takeaways are, if all of us three will want for you to take something from this conversation, is that AI is redefining roles at every level, and it requires new ways to develop talent and structure of work. I think both Daria and Dieter has shared that. And career growth now happens through skill development and lateral moves, not just promotions up traditional ladder. And we see that here as well. And of course, performance reviews must measure impact and outcomes rather than hours worked, tasks completed, or simply performance. I really agree of like splitting that a little bit and making sure that we acknowledge people's work more inclusively, looking from a 360 perspective. And one question that I see that actually had quite a bit of a conversation around it, I think was by Gabriel Scheepman, where the question for, I think, both of us, what are the largest tasks that might be reduced or not needed anymore to be done by middle managers thanks to AI? And any examples that you could share? Because we talked a bit about junior talent, but what's happening with middle managers, and what are the tasks that might be reduced or not needed to be done by middle managers? Maybe Dieter, you want to kick off?
Yeah, I can grab in that. I think it's important to ask the question, what is AI good at, right? So I think AI is really good at replacing repetitive, predictable tasks. It's great at identifying patterns. It's great at consolidating large information sets and providing insights. So I think at a middle management level, to be honest, in a lot of organizations, there's a lot of administrative burden around things like regular reporting. There's a lot of administrative burden around budgets, tracking, those types of things that I actually think AI not necessarily replacing completely, but can play a critical role. And we've already seen a lot of organizations starting to utilize AI for more automated reporting, for example, and interpretive reports, etc., that managers used to have to do manually as part of that. So I think it's about asking that question around, if this was the tasks and the activities that a middle manager did, what is AI good at and how can AI then help there? But I think in a lot of the things that we typically just term as business as usual, I think AI can play a critical role. And to be honest, get people back to defining what a manager really is, because we've kind of blended that a lot more with managing people plus managing work plus managing tasks and activities that has to happen at that level in the organization. I think that's where massive time saving can actually happen.
Thank you, Dieter. Daria, your take?
I totally like agree. And I just recently had a conversation with a manager, and he told me, I don't want to be a people manager. I like coaching people. I like developing people. I like having conversations. But but what the role of manager is that like reports and kind of control. And I don't like that. I don't want to be a people manager. So in some organizations, people like manager is someone who just like controls tasks and does the reporting, and what they can do and they will have potential to do is develop people and develop teams.
Yeah, that's, I think, an exciting expansion of the scope for those who never wanted it or never anticipated that will be the case. So after the Q&A, we also want to prompt all of you who've joined us to download our Organizational Design in the Age of AI or Evolution of Skills 2030 report. I think Daria and Dieter also managed to be part of one or another, actually, as a contributor. This is really, really useful material for you, where you can dive much deeper and have a deeper knowledge on organizational design on the age of AI. I have to say, I personally really, really like this guide. That's why we at Lepai are also proactively looking into how to redesign our teams to make sense for 2026 and beyond, and was really prompted, I think, by both Dieter and Daria from my side. So would really recommend to scan this one and explore. If you want to, of course, and if you have additional questions for those who joined, don't hesitate to reach out to Daria or to Dieter on LinkedIn. I think both would be excited to have a conversation there, of course. And I know that we are going to send a roundup over the next couple of days by Lapaya, where we're also going to link Daria's and Dieter's LinkedIn profiles, which will make it easier for you to reach out to both of them. They're true experts in the topic, so I would really recommend having that conversation. And I think, yeah, both would be excited. And I see also that the Lapaya team also just shared that you can follow Daria and Dieter on LinkedIn with both of their profiles shared. So feel free to connect, feel free to continue having these conversations and the questions. And we are, yeah, very excited to host these webinars with the right of course, speakers. And for the next topic, we want to hear a little bit more from you of what should be the next webinar topic. What is the more relevant for you? Is it AI and bias? Is it leadership in the AI era? Is it building workforce resilience and change readiness in AI age? Or is it AI and employee well-being? As you can see, AI, like COVID, not exactly like that, but that's a phenomenon that is really changing of how we all need to function. So the topic continues to stay really relevant, and we want to make sure that we provide as much quality conversations for you in the coming future. So feel free to vote. And until then, what I really want to say, thank you so much, Daria. Thank you so much, Dieter, for joining us and providing all of this information and having this conversation. Really looking forward to hopefully host you at some point soon again, because really valuable conversation. And yeah, thank you for those who joined and stayed with us throughout the conversation. We're looking forward to receiving your feedback and hearing from you and seeing you on other webinars. So thank you so much for joining, and wishing everyone a wonderful rest of the Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Daria.
Milda. Yeah, thanks. It
Bye
was
bye,
great
everyone.
being
Thanks so
here.
much.